Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this information session. We have a great speaker today. Luis is a representative of a British Columbia Construction Association's Integrated Newcomers program. During the session, please feel free to share your questions on the Q&A tab. Luis will answer them at the end of the session. I don't want to take more time now, so welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'll take a moment to introduce myself, and then I'll get into our program. I am the skills assessor, which just tells you exactly what I do in our program. And my role is taking a look at your skills, credentials, and experience and starting to map your career development in Canada. Now, what I want you to understand is that I do have a construction background. I was a tradeswoman. I was also an educator and a human resource specialist. So when you put those together, I'm really well placed to help you find your way in the labor market. So I'm going to put up our slides here. There you are. There you have it. I'm going to provide some insights on Canada's construction industry and employment opportunities. There's my picture. And this is my team. We are construction specialists, employment specialists, skills assessor, the administrator, and the manager. And together, almost all of us are new immigrants, and together we can help you find your way. What are we, and why should you pay any attention? Well, we're free, and that means that you don't have to pay anything. We are funded by Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada, and we are construction specialists. We're immigrants, career coaches, here to help you. We will provide an in-depth skills assessment for you, including job leads, networking opportunities, helping you learn the construction industry. We'll help you build your connections and get you on your way. Now, but you're with the BC Construction. So in Canada, the province of British Columbia is often, most times, called BC, which stands for British Columbia. And that is, in fact, where the BC Construction Association is located. But we are the organization that delivers this program, and we are very much Canadian-wide in our scope. Our career professionals live across the country. We have connections with construction associations across the country. So I want people to realize that we really are a federal program across Canada. No matter where you decide to land, if you're interested in construction, you should look at us. So what does the industry look like? So before I get into that, I want to mention to you that in the chat box, before we got started, I put two links. The first link is called buildforce.ca. And that's a research organization, a company in Canada that is charged with doing the research on our labor market and our industry, our economic industry for construction. And you can go there yourself. This is where all the information in this report or presentation comes from. But you can go and look at all of the reports, even drilling them down into regional areas where you might want to see how the construction sector is doing. The other link that I put in early is the link for the application program for our application to get into our program. If you have any interest or aren't even sure if you qualify, go ahead and send us, an email or fill out the application. Okay, so what does the industry look like? It's really booming, and I'll probably tell you that many times before we're finished because there is so much activity right now. I haven't seen the likes of this for maybe never. But construction is a leading source of growth in Canada. It's the top of growth domestic product for healthy industries. So we're not seeing much of a decline. The backslide in the pandemic is all gone, it seems, and things are really booming. So in Canada right now, 1 in every 13 working age people is actually working in the construction sector. So it's 7.8 or probably at this point over 8% of the GDP. And even though there's all kinds of large companies, Ledcor, Stantec, WSP, PCL, 62% of the construction industry in Canada is made up of very small companies with less than 5 employees. So keep that in mind when you're looking for work. The labor force is changing, and this slide is meant to illustrate the actual gender parity of women and men in the construction industry. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. This slide is meant to tell you how big the construction workforce is. My apologies. We're going to get into the gender disparity in a moment. But what it's telling us, and these figures are now outdated because the need for tire workers in construction is far greater than anyone anticipated. We've known since the 70s that we had a declining birth rate in Canada, and we've needed to do special programs and lots of immigration to develop a labor force that can compete on an international level. So we've been trying a lot of things for a long time, but it's getting worse. The retirement, primarily people my age, are deciding to leave the construction industry. And so this slide, if you do the math, shows a shortage of 29,000, but it's far greater than that. And recently in a report, Toronto said that they would be short of 147,000 construction workers in the next 7 or 8 years because of the housing plans. So, it's there's a lot of people and it's growing. Now we want to talk about the professions, and the slide tells us that 20% of the construction jobs are regulated, and that's for the engineering and the health and safety of people. And there are also jobs that aren't necessarily mandatorily regulated, but there could be training that is voluntary. But if the training is welcomed and recognized by employers, then it makes it very valuable training. So there might be times when we suggest that even though you may not have the mandatory training, you could go and get some voluntary training, which would help. Or I might even, and I always do, try to include job links and leads for jobs that require no mandatory training. Now, I don't mean to confuse you, so let's just go to the next slide, and I think this will help. We have many, many, many different occupations, job titles within the construction industry. But I think you're well aware, if you're interested in this session, that the licensed technical professions are the ones that are most likely to have mandatory qualifications. And we have mandatory qualifications for engineers and architects, technicians, technologists, and we will help you find your way through that to make sure that you're connected with the right regulatory body. Also, in our skilled trades, and we have a high need for skilled trade workers in Canada right now. It's really a pinch. We have something called the Red Seal. And so you could come into Canada with a lot of skilled trade background, and we would be able to put you into something called an apprenticeship and get you qualified and mandatorily certified in skilled trades. Then there are other jobs, logistics jobs or administrator jobs or payroll jobs that don't require mandatory training, but we still need some of them in the construction industry. So when I do a skill assessment, I'm going to look at that individual's skills and experience for things that are mandatorily regulated, and I will put in all the appropriate links and suggest where you should look. But for example, if we talk about engineer, I'm going to suggest that you look for engineer and training opportunities or even technology and technician opportunities, because you can get to work quicker and make good money while you're in the path to your full regulation. So that's why it's important for you to know the jobs that are regulated, the ones that are voluntarily regulated, and the ones that really don't have any mandatory training that you could maybe slide into right away. Let me know if you have questions. I will just mention that after this presentation, I will be going to our booth, and I'll be there for an hour when we're finished here. So come and visit me, and we can chat one-on-one if you have any more questions about the presentation today. This is the slide that I confused earlier, and this is talking about the gender in construction. And the slide shows you that 5% of on-site, tools in hand, construction workers are female. which is not terrific. Although in Alberta, it is 7%. But the offsite, and that's, project managers, administrative jobs, women make up 41% of the construction industry. So we're doing a lot to move more females into on-site jobs, but you will see yourself if you are a woman that works in construction. And what this slide doesn't illustrate is, well, how many new immigrants do we have in construction? If you look at immigrants in Canada and the new immigrants right now, you're making up a minimum of 16% of the construction industry. And there's some pockets where it's more like 26, 28% of the construction industry. So no matter where you're coming from, you are likely to see yourself in Canada's construction industry. So where is the work? And this, as I say here, it's relative. You notice that the bright red is Ontario and the dark green across the right side there is Quebec. When you put those two provinces together in the center of Canada, you have far more than half the population. So yeah, there's a lot of construction there. But I don't want to minimize the amount of construction that's happening in all of the other provinces and territories at this time. And I think what I want to say is, think about where you want to land and take a look at the construction opportunities, because if you're going to a province like New Brunswick or Manitoba, you will have a far better opportunity because there's so many less job hunters than you're going to find in the bigger city centers. And for the most part, it's just relative. So bigger centers have got a lot more construction. But I recently read a report, and I don't think there's any provinces that are not doing heavy construction and infrastructure. So I'm talking roadways, hospitals, court buildings. So there's construction happening coast to coast. Yeah, the national outlook is good. This slide tells us that Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia have the biggest labor shortages at this time, but it's because of a larger investment. So it's all good news. Okay, now let's talk about the program, our services, eligibility, and the application process. As I mentioned, I put the application link into the chat at the beginning before we started. Well, what this slide says is that these are some of the things that we think are essential to you before you get here. And we are a pre-arrival program, and in fact, we have to move you in 30 days after your landing. So our work with you is very, very intense during that time frame. So we like to get you onboarded so that we can get that process going. What we think, we want you to understand what your career path would look like in Canada. We want to help you develop Canadian experience before you even get employed. And there are ways of doing that, networking, research. We want to explain your credentials, show you where can be, where you can get credit, or where you can take your other technical skills and get work and connections. We're going to help you with all of that. Yeah, we'll get you connected. We help achieve employment services. We will also help you find your other arrival services so that you can do things like get your kids enrolled in school and medical support, how to catch a bus, banking, those kinds of things as well. We're here to help. Now, how are you eligible? Well, there's 4 things. You have to have one of these things, and you must be outside of Canada. So please register soon. We try to work with people within a month before arrival. So if we know you're coming in 3 months, you can apply and we can get things ready so that we go right into your work when you come up for your turn. And you need to have one of these 4 pieces of evidence: invitation letter, a COPR, a passport request letter, or a medical background checks requested. Again, there is our link, www.bccassn.com/apply-to-IN, which is integrating newcomers. This is just the steps that we go through. You put in your application, we take a look and see where you fit and give you the appropriate response. If there are better organizations, we're going to refer you to them. We check your eligibility, and then your application comes to me. it comes to me at the same time as you is sent to an employment liaison specialist, your career coach. I spend some time doing your assessment, your in-depth credential assessment, and then I pass that on to your career coach that is probably already connected with you, who will start setting up your plan and getting you on your way. And then the fifth step was to be transition you, hopefully, into employment. And then recently in a seminar, someone said, how long? We've been having, for some reason, a 3-month. Lots of people have been getting landed within 3 months, which is actually pretty good. So I look at this slide as the questions you should be asking yourself. How do I learn about the industry that I'm targeting? Is it important to decide where to live? Oh, it's very important, very important. Canada is such a large country and has such different pockets of geography and climate that you really need to pay attention. We can give you some experience, share our experience on wages and what you can expect, job titles that you should be looking for. If this is what the job is called where you come from, then I'm going to give you some ideas of what that job is called here. With a lot of quantity surveyors, and in our NOP code, it's simply called construction estimator. It's the same job. So we'll check the qualifications, answer your questions to help you get ready for this awesome adventure of coming to Canada. And we look forward to supporting you. So once again, thank you to Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada for supporting us. I am going to the booth when we're done questions here. And at this point, you get all the questions.
I have a question here from Juan Camilo. Hi, Luis. My wife and I are landing into Toronto. She's looking for a job in interior design. What are the job prospects for this career in Toronto?
Well, in Toronto, let's start with the Greater Toronto area. Toronto itself is many communities. I think there's York and Etobicoke and actual Toronto, or the very sort of city center. And then around that, you have the Greater Toronto area. And then beyond that, you've got places like Oakville and Mississauga and Brampton and Hamilton. So it's huge. And that means that the job prospects are good for many, and if not all, kinds of activity. So make sure that you're casting a net far from in that area. But often what I see in conjunction with interior design is architect, or maybe graphic design, or even CAD, AutoCAD designer. And I'm giving you some ideas of the sort of non-mandatory kinds of jobs. But in interior designer is a mandatory, regulated, reserved title job in Canada. And so you would have to, apply. We would provide the links for that and look at getting that qualification recognized. But it's a great area because a lot of people will hire interior designers that don't have a certain, seal, but rather they like the work you've done in that. So it's also kind of a creative aspect. So I would suggest that people look for things like interior design assistant, or coordinator, interior design project coordinator, or a project manager, and those kinds of jobs to get started. But there's a lot of, I guess the last thing I would mention is industrial designer, because those two positions are kind of put together in our system. So if you're not necessarily designing interiors, but rather products, it's very sort of similar process. But I think with all of when I relate this to construction, I think with all of the activity and work that's happening, there's a ton of interior design that has to go along with housing and residential construction, as well as what we're seeing because of all of the office closes during the pandemic and people don't want to come back. What we're seeing is a huge amount of what's called fit out. So commercial contracts and leases where there big changeover in clients. So there's a whole lot of design that's taking place for fit out. Now, I've just mentioned a few areas that an interior designer can go into, but it's a good job, it's a good career, and I think there's tons of potential in Canada. Good luck. Thanks for coming to Canada.
Thank you for answering that question. That was something that I was thinking on also too. What about interior design? Because there are so many people coming to Canada as interior designers, but it's also a regulated field here. So
Yes.
it's good that we have in Canada this type of programs where they can get the certifications to work here. I don't know if there are any other questions from the people in the session. If you have any questions, we'll still have some time here. So please feel free to share them in the Q&A.
How long can it take the process to become regulated? Somewhere between 1 and 4 years. And that's not a good answer. But if you are working, and it's not maybe quite as comparable to engineers, but if you're an intern, let's say an intern interior designer, and you're working directly with someone who's licensed, it goes faster. I know that much. Do a question there?
We have another question, regulated with a license or just a certificate?
It depends. What job are we talking about? Certificates, yeah. Again, this is it, and it's not easy because people will come from all kinds of different countries with different terminology or vernacular when it comes to educational credentials, right? In Canada, a PhD, followed by a master's, I suppose, and then it's a bachelor's. Below a bachelor's would be a university diploma, and then under that is certificate. So the difference between a regulated license and a certificate should be that a regulated license is a higher standard of qualification than a certificate. But if you're talking project management, now I'll use that as a good example because project managers in construction were highly in demand. We need them everywhere. And we have PMI, we have PMP, we have PMBOK. There's all of those qualifications. They're all good. They're all good. So any sort of certification from anything, I look at it as valuable because you've done the skills. I like to match what, the work you've done. If you did it there, you can do it here. We just need to make that match.
Yes. Well, if there are no more questions, we can end the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Luis, for your insights, for all this amazing, valuable information you have shared with us today.